LEGO Harry Potter 2022 has been an absolute hit so far. However, one thing that has not been hit out of the park, unfortunately, is the minifigure department, as per usual. While the sets are incredibly accurate, incredibly detailed, the minifigures, yeah, not so much. And a lot of them, fortunately, can be upgraded using existing parts, pieces, and only a tiny little bit of Photoshop in this case. So in order to give these minifigures a much needed upgrade, as well as give them the attention to detail that they deserve in order to match the beauty of the sets that they came in, I thought I would show you guys some simple and easy ways to transform these minifigures and just make them absolutely perfect. A lot of the pieces as well that I will be showing you are currently in production, and hopefully you've got a couple of them in your collection as is, so it should be really easy, cheap, and simple to do. So let's get started. First up on our to-do list is
Neville Lunge Button.
And this version in particular is from the brand new Hogwarts Moments Defense book. And this minifigure, for the most part, is really well done. However, one thing that I personally did not think was all that accurate was his hairpiece. Now, this set is supposed to be from the Goblet of Fire, and everyone knows that the Goblet of Fire was the year where literally no one got a haircut. So Neville's hair being this short, to me, personally, really didn't quite match up. Like most people in that film, his hair was very long, very chaotic, and honestly quite a bit curly, which is why I'm going to take the Ninjago Kai really super curly hairpiece and actually swap it out and give Neville a bit more of a crazy, longer, and chaotic looking hairdo in order to match that good old stereotype that the Goblet of Fire gave itself. Luckily, this hairpiece is super common, so it's really easy to get a hold of, and to me, really makes Neville actually match, I guess, the context of the Goblet of Fire. Next up is Sirius Black from the Shrieking Shack, and honestly, I think he is the biggest letdown out of the entire minifigure lineup that I have for you today, because this minifigure is completely brand new. He is entirely redone. It's a completely different figure. However, that figure already existed in 2019 and was a lot more accurate and actually had some leg printing, and that's mainly the reason that I think he's a bit more accurate. Besides that, there wasn't really many changes. I mean, they gave him a new face print, they gave him a new torso print, but for me, I would just swap it out. I mean, this minifigure is very common. He was in a really cheap set. He's since been in a ton of books and is really easy to get a hold of. And just having that extra leg printing to me makes him entirely better. I mean, at the end of the day, you could give him, I guess, the newer face print, which really doesn't change all that much. It will just make him match, I guess, your Order of the Phoenix Sirius Black. But I really don't understand why LEGO redid this figure. I mean, he was perfect to begin with. He was mass produced. It would have been really cheap and easy, I imagine, to at least put him in the set. So for that reason, just go get yourself an older version. The one from the Shrieking Shack is really a big step down to me. Let's take it back to 2018 and talk about Cho Chang from the original Harry Potter CMF. Now, the more time that passes, the more this CMF gets incredibly inaccurate and pretty disappointing overall as a whole. And Cho Chang from that series is no exception. Firstly is the glaring sort of issue that I have with the legs of her not really being the right height. So firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Cho Chang from my student accessory pack that I bought far too many of and just completely swap out her legs and give them to Cho. Now, originally in this case as well, I probably would have changed over the hairpiece. However, I really don't feel like that's necessarily needed anymore because there is a brand new hairpiece that personally I think works a lot better. Now, I mean, this all at the end of the day depends on which Cho Chang you're going for. If you're going through year 4 Cho Chang or if you're going through year 5 Cho Chang. For me, I'm trying to make the one from the Order of the Phoenix, which is why I'm actually going to utilize this like violet par hair recolor from the Hogwarts trunk. I know, it's a miracle that Hogwarts trunk has become useful for something, as I'm going to steal that little hairpiece from that set and put it on the CMF Cho Chang in order just to make her, I think, look a little bit more accurate to how she looked in the Order of the Phoenix. She always had her hair pinned back and tied back, and you can sort of see like the molding of the headband there in black, and overall I think this looks really good. It really matches, I guess, the sleekness of Cho's hair, and overall really just makes her look a tiny bit more accurate, especially when she is going to go and grab Harry under that mistletoe. Moving along, and up next we have my favorite thing to army build from LEGO Harry Potter, and that is the Dementors. Firstly, can we please have an army building style Dementor set that doesn't include a giant stag Patronus? And 2, can we please utilize the awesome sort of cloak hood piece that Star Wars gets? I mean, just look at that beautiful detail and texture that Luke Skywalker has that the Dementors just don't. I don't know what it is about this hood piece. I know it wasn't on Bricks and Pieces, so I'm not sure if it's specifically licensed for LEGO Star Wars? And if so, why? And if not, then why aren't we using it on the Dementors? This hood piece has been around for over a decade, and to me, at least these days, sort of seems a little outdated, which is why I'm going to take my Luke Skywalker's hood from my multiple Death Trooper sets and stick it on the Dementor in order to make him look a little bit more menacing. And the reason I think this hood works so much better in the Dementor's case is because the Dementors for the movie were literally put in like tanks of water in order to make their cloaks look like really drapey and soft and smooth when they sort of floated around, and I really feel like this hood piece gets that point across a lot better and overall just works a lot better with the Dementors. Next up is everyone's least favorite and favorite villain at the same time, and that is the sleazebag that is Dolores Umbridge. Now, this is actually our third Umbridge, and unfortunately, she is the least detailed version out of all of them. Recently, I went to the Harry Potter set tour, and this costume was actually on display, and it had so much more detail than what we got with the minifigure. I even brought the minifigure with me, and putting them side by side, it was a real disappointment. Now, unfortunately, there's not too many pink leg pieces that I feel like would work perfectly with Umbridge. However, there is luckily a nice pink skirt piece that actually came in the Simpsons CMF series as well as 11 from Stranger Things. There was even on Bricks and Pieces for a while. I don't think it still is, but I'm gonna take this little skirt piece here and I'm gonna chuck it on Umbridge just to give her just a tiny bit more detail and make her look a real bit better. I mean, I don't know why she didn't get any skirt printing. There's literally only one minifigure in that set that has it, but at least this skirt piece does exist, so you can just give her a little bit more oomph, a little bit more detail. Really, it would have been lovely for LEGO to throw this in with the set, but they didn't, so we'll just have to, unfortunately, do it ourselves. Next up is Victor Krum, and this one really goes for both Victor Krum figures, being both the Yule Ball outfit as well as the First Task outfit. For this demonstration and video though, for all intents and purposes, I have just chosen the First Task one because I feel like he just looks a tiny bit cooler. Now, step one with Victor Krum is just to completely turn his face around. Never, ever, ever show him smiling. He's just a really grumpy, really sort of like straight-faced, resting bitch face sort of dude. So we're gonna leave him like that and call it a day. Now, another thing I do want to do is actually swap out his hairpiece. This to me is just far too much hair for Victor Krum. I personally would have preferred them just to like give it like this and give us a head with only one side and look sort of like this, except they didn't do that. But luckily in the Marvel CMF we got Falcon, who had this really weird looking hairpiece, but shockingly it actually come in handy as much as I kind of hate it. So I'm just going to stick this onto Victor Krum's head, and already I feel like it's just a tiny bit better. He's got such an awkward hair length in terms of like, I guess, trying to convert that over to a LEGO minifigure. This I feel like is a really nice middle ground. However, it does mean that you would be able to see this other face, which looks really scary and kind of awkward. So we're going to pretend that that doesn't exist. I mean, I guess you could, if you really wanted to take it a step further, is use like rubbing alcohol or something and try and rub the face off. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would just like shove this in a glass case and never look at the other side of him again. Or, I mean, you could also just swap it out with Lucius Malfoy's head, but personally, I think this face is a lot better than that one. Next up is Hermione from the Ministry of Magic. However, we're not really changing up Hermione. Instead, we're actually changing up Mathilda Hopkirk, sort of like the little Polyjuice Potion alter ego from that set. Now, this minifigure, overall, I mean, the torso looks fantastic. The rest, really not that great. I mean, the face is pretty good, but the first thing that I want to swap out, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people are with me on this, just judging by the comments and feedback that I saw when I reviewed that set, is to take the good old like bride hair that is like all twisted up in this bun and swap it out. Mathilda definitely had more of like a slicked back office style corporate girly looking thing, so that ponytail really doesn't suit, and already it just looks a tiny bit better and a lot more accurate, I guess, to the film than the ponytail piece we got her. And this is something LEGO could have very easily done, but I guess this piece just wasn't in mass production like that ponytail, which is probably, unfortunately, why they didn't include it. Now, like pretty much everyone else in that set, she also didn't come with any leg printing or anything like that, which is why I'm actually going to take Cho Chang from the figure we fixed earlier and steal her skirt real quick and actually chuck it on Mathilda, because in the movie, she had this really nice sort of like grey pencil skirt. I mean, you could also use a printed skirt piece. However, to me at least, I think the grey skirt actually looks a little bit more accurate and just makes the minifigure feel a bit more detailed than sort of the printing would. Now, as annoying and fiddly as these are to put on, unfortunately, they add a lot of extra detail and make minifigures look so much more accurate and so much more detailed. Just go get yourself another Cho Chang and give her this skirt. Now, Mathilda actually looks like a corporate office girly, ready to go and like sneak in and go and distract and help Umbridge sort of arrest muggles. So that's fun. Next up, also from that Ministry of Magic set, is Mary Elizabeth Cattermole. Wow, we are really going really strong with this set. There's a lot of inaccuracies in it. And shockingly, she was the only minifigure to get leg printing. I mean, look, I'll take it. I like the extra detail. However, I really feel like she just didn't deserve it. One thing that I think that she did deserve, though, is a much more accurate hair piece. I mean, this one works well. The black looks nice, but it's just incredibly basic. And just like Victor Krum, there was actually a hair piece that showed up in the Marvel CMF that I think personally worked far better, and that is of Captain Carter. I can't imagine this pin-up hairstyle being useful too often, but shockingly, at least in this case, I think it works far better. The only problem is it's not the right color. So ideally, you would have a black recoloring of this, and I feel like it just works a lot better. It's still not perfect, but it definitely has sort of like the pinned up, curled look that was in the movie that I think personally matches a lot better than the first option that Lego actually gave us. Especially when you recolor it to black, I feel like this looks so much better and much more accurate. However, for now, we'll just take the sacrifice of having the slightly wrong hair color. I mean, at least I think having a better design and a slightly inaccurate color is better than having like a wrong design and the right color. But at the end of the day, that's up to you. This is your collection, your minifigures. Do what you want. Now, this rat from the Shrieking Shack, unfortunately, also needs to have an upgrade. In the last episode of the Harry Potter Fixing the Figures that I made, I did talk about this sort of mullet piece and sort of swapping that out, and Lego actually recently did make that mullet piece in dark orange in one of the worst-selling Lego sets, the Queer Eye set. Now, if there's one thing that Queer Eye was good for, it was amazing part usage and really interesting minifigure prints and all. So, props to that, and props to it for giving us this beautiful mullet piece, which personally makes Peter Pettigrew actually look like Peter Pettigrew. And again, to me, it's really shocking that they didn't include this in the Shrieking Shack, especially since they've done a new version of Peter Pettigrew, they remade Sirius, like just changing up the hairpiece and making it this mullet piece that recently they made and molded, I feel like would have made so much more sense. I mean, you get some more use, I guess, out of the recoloring of this one. I mean, it just looks so much more accurate. It looks like so much more rat-like as well. I highly, highly, highly recommend buying one of those mullet pieces. A lot of people part out that set. It's a really cheap one to get a hold of and makes him look so much better. And lastly is Bellatrix, who is by far one of the biggest culprits and was the star and sort of inspiration behind this entire series in general, because this minifigure is so disappointing. Now, in the first video I ever made, we did a major upgrade to her, firstly by taking the skirt piece off the 2010 Bellatrix, and secondly taking the head off the CMF Bellatrix. And by doing that, we got this absolute masterpiece of a minifigure who really is just spectacular and one of the biggest changes and upgrades I feel like I've ever done out of upgrading minifigures. However, recently there was the Friends apartment set, which came with a brown version of her hairpiece, which strangely enough then matched the design that they did of Bellatrix for Brickheads, as they used darker brown for her hair instead of black. Now, I personally put that down just to having too much black otherwise in that Brickheads, but it made me want to go and get that dark brown piece and swap it out and see how it actually looked, because for the most part in some scenes Helena Bonham Carter's hair does look more dark brown than it does black, so I wanted to swap it out and see how we go. I mean, personally for me, I feel like the black kind of does look better now that I've sort of put this on the minifigure, but at the same time it adds a lot of contrast and maybe is actually slightly closer to the wig. Now, another change that I wanted to do in order to make Bellatrix just the absolute best is actually modify her wand. Now, this is something that I saw on my subreddit, as someone actually bent the wand in order to make it more closely and accurately represent Bellatrix's wand from the film. And I just thought that was absolutely genius, especially with the amount of wands that you get. Like, you literally get a spare. I've got so many wands lying around. This really isn't going to affect too much. And if it makes her look just that much better, I am all down for it. Now, in order to do this, I am just going to use my fingers and bend it ever so slightly, sort of in the middle of the wand, which is where Bellatrix's tends to sort of curve over. It's such a small thing on such a common and useful piece, and really, I think just ties Bellatrix all together. I really cannot think of anything else that would make her look even better. Like, unless they did arm printing and actual proper skirt printing on the next one, I feel like this is the peak Bellatrix minifigure. And in case you are one that prefers the black, here is how she looks all together. So those are all of the minifigures with their upgrades, making them look so much more accurate and so much more detailed. And as you can see, a lot of them were really easy and probably very cheap. The only one that I feel like is going to be kind of expensive and hard to get a hold of is the dark brown sort of Bellatrix hair, if you do want that. But then again, I think the black hair works really well in that case. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it somewhat helpful. And let me know if you've done any of these yourself or plan on doing any of these yourself. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel down below. And don't forget to check out the rest of my minifigure upgrades. And until next time, guys, I'll see you later.